Welcome Trinidad and Tobago to our News 4 report, a product of the Government Information Services Limited. I'm Nicola Barito. Let's take a look at the headlines. Education Minister says all persons of various ethnicities and backgrounds who contributed to ensuring that the East Indian legacy survived and remains an inspiration to the people of this country should be greatly appreciated. The international waterfront soon to be transformed into a display of our cultural and historical heritage. And a special report on the role and function of an ambassador as we focus on reconnecting the diaspora. Thank you for joining us to our top story. Education Minister Dr. The Honorable Tim Gopi Singh says all persons of various ethnicities and backgrounds who contributed to ensuring that the East Indian legacy survived and remains an inspiration to the people of this country should be greatly appreciated. Minister Gopi Singh was speaking at the ceremony to mark the inscription of the documentary Heritage of the Indian Indentured Laborers on the UNESCO Memory of the World Registrar at the National Archives of Trinidad and Tobago.
It has been 167 years since the East Indian indentured laborers' arrival to this country, and the East Indian culture still remains very much alive today. The minister says the rich cultural diversity of Trinidad and Tobago is one of its qualities which makes the Twin Island Republic so unique.
The lessons and benefits of our East Indian indentured laborers are many. They have taught Trinidad and Tobago culture, determination, dedication, courage, economic stability, cultural diversity, and social and political values which endure to this day, and which has made our country a great democracy.
Dr. Gopi Singh says in recognizing the legacy of the East Indian ancestors, it is fitting to express gratitude to those who have ensured that the rich culture survived through the years and is still recognized presently. The Education Minister says Trinidad and Tobago is indeed a land of freedom and unity.
Today's inscription will, in a very fundamental way, preserve this legacy for future generations. And today, as we hail this historic contribution in this forum of diversity, let us never forget that it represents true freedom, tolerance, and unity in our blessed country, as well as the triumph of unity over discord, harmony, and hope over despair.
With the coming together of all people, with the acceptance and tolerance of all diversity, and in recognition that the very differences make Trinidad and Tobago, Minister Gopi Singh says the island is truly exceptional.
As we celebrate our rich history and the people who made our country the wonderful place to live that we are today, we must recommit to moving forward as one nation, recognizing strength in our diversity and individuality, and a common history of hope and struggle that we share.
The ceremony was hosted by the National Archives of Trinidad and Tobago, NAT, to mark the inclusion of documentary Heritage of Indian Indentured Laborers in the UNESCO Memory of the World International Register. The Multicultural Ministry has noted that while the inscription on the International Register took place in July 2011, NAT, as custodians of the records, has opted to commemorate the achievement within the context of Trinidad and Tobago's 50th anniversary of independence celebrations. These are the only documents for ancestral and lineage research by descendants of indentured laborers. Veena Bharath, News 4.
The international waterfront will soon be transformed into a display of our cultural and historical heritage in time for Jubilee Independence Day celebrations. The display is part of the Tourism Ministry's efforts to showcase this milestone in our tourism product. Unveiling part of the decor project, feature speaker Chief Justice Ivor Archie said the exhibit not only gave citizens a chance to reflect on our achievements as a nation, but the kind of society we want to create.
The first of 10 sculptures erected in commemoration of this year's Jubilee Independence Anniversary has been unveiled on the wall of Tower D of the International Waterfront Center. The sculpture, entitled The First Peoples and Colonization, depicts the Amerindians and the Spanish landing on these shores. Feature speaker, the launch Chief Justice Ivor Archie, in drawing comparison to the Old Testament of the Holy Bible, said Jubilee meant a time for new beginnings and represented a chance for this country to start fresh, as well as to truly establish our own heritage.
50 years is an age when, as an individual or as a nation, we are expected to move into a season of responsibility and maturity when we complete one season of life and embark on the other. When we are expected to leverage the life experience that we have gathered up to that point to secure and enhance our own future and that of the generations which follow.
In echoing similar sentiments, Minister of Planning and the Economy, Dr. Bo Tiwari, said the DECOR project provided an avenue for showcasing what a nation's culture entwined with economic development could achieve.
We want to celebrate culture and the arts and bring it to the center stage of our 50th anniversary celebration of independence, because it is important to do this to humanize the brutality of politics, and it is important to humanize the competitiveness of economics. And if you put culture in the center together with economic achievement and with political drive for achievement, we might be able to do something even more than we have done in the last 50 years.
In highlighting the project, Tourism Minister Dr. Rupert Griffith said it depicted our nation's past and where it has reached since then.
Our DECOR Enhancement Project is a tribute to the richness of our culture and the heritage that bind us together, helping us carve our special niche in the world.
The project will be unveiled in 3 phases and culminates in time for August 31st celebrations. It's expected that the display will remain until the end of this year and will showcase the various origins of the people that make up our cosmopolitan society. Kimberly Ramkalawan, News 4.
Wayne Cunningham has a sport report right after the break. Stay with us.
Before 2007, what we had existing in the Trinidad and Tobago Police was a manual system where the information were placed in books and ledgers. With the introduction of CAPA, all information now is being placed on computers.
You will see how we have been redeployed so more of us can take to the streets on 2 legs and 4 legs, on 2 wheels and 4 wheels, on land and in the air, with the aim of not only fighting crime, but working to prevent crime before it happens.
The initiative itself is focusing on our core services, that being responding to calls for service from the public and being out in the community patrolling to ensure that there is a high level of safety and security within the communities, within the neighborhoods that our officers are patrolling in.
Our dads aren't the only ones who beat up on kids. Sometimes kids beat up on kids.
Every child has the right to be protected from violence, abuse, and neglect.
Because I shouldn't be afraid to go to school or play with my friends.
Because no child should be hurt by adults or by other children.
Because safety is my right. Stop the bullying. Unite for children!
Queen's Park Cricket Club is on track to yet capture another title this season. The Premier League champions became the first team to qualify for the semi-finals of the Trinidad and Tobago Cricket Board 2020 Festival. The weather played a huge part in the Parkites' good fortune, much to the chagrin T&Tech. Wayne Cunningham has the details.
T&Tech were the unfortunate victims of the weather when their game versus Queen's Park in the Trinidad and Tobago Cricket Board's T20 Festival was called off. Heavy overnight rain, coupled with unrelated activities damaging the outfield at Garakara Park, caused the demise of T&Tech, as the place in the last 4 was awarded to the Parkites due to them having more wins in the preliminary round. Queen's Park had 2, and the Electricity Boys only 1. It was a sad development because TNTech was in fine nick versus Bamboo, with Oakma's Xavier Marshall and Horace Miller taking the bowling apart early in a game reduced to 17 overs per side. Marshall launching this ball back over the head of bowler Selvin Jacob for 6. Jacob also came in for some stick from Miller. Ryan Bash did not fare any better, Marshall doing the damage on this occasion. Nashwan Lachman was also dispatched over the ropes, Miller with the big shot. Lachman would get his man though. Miller going for another big hit and was caught on the long off boundary by Hospitalis Singh for a top score of 44. Jason Mohammed joined Marshall, but that partnership lasted all of 2 balls as Marshall was caught by Keon Isaac at long on for 42. Manan Barrett the bowler. Riyad Emrit joined his captain and looked in good form, but was gone for 11, bowled by Barrett. Mohammed was his team's next high scorer with 23. Richard Curry contributed a useful 19. He was caught and bowled in spectacular fashion by Terence Hines as TNTech amassed 169 for 5 in their allotted 17 overs. Bamboo's reply never got going as Riyad Emrit and Ansel Bagan took out the top and middle order in devastating fashion. Andre Brown was the only man who offered any resistance as he compiled 19 before he became Bagan's second victim. Bagan had impressive figures of 3 for 11 from 4 overs. Emrit also looking good with 3 for 12 off 3. Bamboo could only manage 91 for 9 in their 17 overs as TNTech won by 78 runs. But we will not see them again in this tournament due to some unfortunate developments. Wayne Cunningham, News 4 Sports.
When we come back, fulfilling the promise.
The Homo sapien, we'll call him Mark. It spends its days trying to attract a mate. Success. What follows is a series of celebratory actions unique to this species. Every Homo sapien has their own way of displaying themselves to attract a female. But things don't go according to plan.
Where the water gone?
No water, no love. Pay your WASA bill today.
The Water and Sewage Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. Water security for every sector. Deliver it. Sustain it.
In our special feature, Fulfilling the Promise, we highlight the initiatives and achievements of the government over its 2 years in office. At News 4, we've joined in that effort, and each day in our news package, we feature one of those highlights from the long and impressive list of milestones over these 24 months. In this story, we look at the early childhood care and education centers.
The official opening of the Clark Rochard Early Childhood Education Center, which you have been asking for years. It is now a reality. Prime Minister, this Early Childhood Education Center is just one of what the Ministry of Education has been able to do since you have come into government. We have completed construction of 11 more early childhood education centers, and we have another 12 that will be ready for opening by September of this year. We have another 24 that will commence construction in June 2011 this year, and by December 2011 we would have completed those 24.
You know, there's a saying, and it's backed by scientific evidence, that the first 7 years of a life of a child are the most important years of that child. In this 4-year term, Minister of Education is your mandate. My vision, my mission is to achieve universal preschool education. Why? Because those first few years of a life of a child, they make the difference between a better quality of life or a life of poverty. Today's events reflects, in my respectful view, one of the best investments we can make as a government and as a people in our country's development and for the future.
When we come back, a 3-part feature with His Excellency Dr. Neil Parson, Ambassador to the United States, Mexico, and the OAS, as we focus on reconnecting the diaspora.
Carjacking has become very prevalent in recent times. Certain makes of vehicles are more preferred targets for criminals. When approaching intersections or junctions, ensure that all doors are locked and windows are wound up if possible. Remember, crime prevention is everyone's business. A message from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service.
Reporting from communities across the country. People are calling Nalis Libraries their library. Tell me, why is Nalis your library?
My library is where I can have fun learning.
My library is helping me earn better grades with online research resources.
My library is my gateway to the world of information.
My library is providing access to the differently abled. As a visually impaired person, I can envision limitless possibilities.
My library is making my world truly worldwide with free internet access.
My library is helping me keep an eye on my health with access to the virtual health library via the Nalis website.
Nalis is my library.
I had the opportunity to speak with His Excellency Dr. Neil Parson, Ambassador to the United States, Mexico, and the OAS. He gave us some insight on the role and function of an ambassador as we focus on reconnecting the diaspora. Ambassador, welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to jump right into it. Can you define your role as Trinidad and Tobago representative to the United States of America and, of course, Mexico, as well as the OAS?
Sure. As an ambassador, you become the equivalent of your country's representative, head of state, outside of state. Therefore, the actual title is Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary. The implications of that are pretty profound. So therefore, every word I utter, actions I take, reflects directly on Trinidad and Tobago and the image of Trinidad and Tobago. And the role is, I could probably define it in 4 functional areas. From an ambassadorial point of view to the United States and to Mexico. And that will be principally one of political representation. So I do spend quite a bit of time on Capitol Hill, in Congress at times, raising and looking after the bilateral interests between the United States and Trinidad and Tobago. We have had long cordial relations with the U.S. dating back to 1962. So in as much as we are celebrating 50 years as an independent country this year, we are also celebrating 50 years of diplomatic relations with the United States. So our country's first ambassador to the U.S. was actually Sir Ellis Clark, who subsequently went on to become president. The second role really is consular dispensation, which is really looking after your diaspora and the needs of your diaspora. You know, issues of passports, visas, the desolate, those are disadvantaged in your host country. You are there to look after the interests of your nationals, and the United States is by far the largest center of Trinidad and Tobago diaspora outside of Trinidad and Tobago. The third, I would say, is more diplomatic in orientation, which is really maintaining the relationship with your other colleagues in and around in Washington. But in many instances, many of the ambassadors are resident in Washington but serve other territories, similar to what I do for Mexico. I'm resident in Washington, D.C. Having said that, it becomes a portal of interaction in a multilateral environment, as it were, with bilateral engagements in that particular sort of environment. And fourthly, and probably most importantly, it's commercial-centric, which is really looking after the business and trade interests of Trinidad and Tobago, and I've been spending a lot of time doing that, looking after trying to attract foreign direct investment opportunities back at home, incentivizing, diaspora, trade diplomacy, and other.
Which actually I want to dive a little bit deeper into, because it now brings me to, as ambassador, what have you and your office done to further enhance, the good relations between Trinidad and Tobago, the United States, Mexico?
I would tell you in the first 12 or 13 weeks, I went to about 16 cities, I kid you not. And I try to focus on those areas where our diaspora is concentrated. Our largest population by far is the state of New York, clearly New York City, where we estimate the population there is close to 300,000, if not more. Florida is next, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, we estimate some 150 members of our diaspora. The DMV area, which will be District of Columbia, Maryland, Virginia, we estimate about 75,000 diaspora there. We have fairly large concentrations in Atlanta, Hartford, Connecticut, Houston, LA, those areas. When I physically travel and I go to these cities, I try to achieve about 4 things. One is, first and foremost, visit government as a courtesy call. Mayors, senators, congressmen, councillors, commissioners, you physically go and let them know you are here, and our people, they are here. And there's a management of expectations in terms of you looking after the interests of my people. Secondly, I always host a business forum. So I try to get a business community in that respective city in a room and explain to them the opportunities available in Trinidad and Tobago, and the business incentives, and listen to what their interests are, and see how we can reconcile demand and supply. I always argue from a business standpoint, an embassy, a mission, an ambassador ought to be a facilitator of a process, a reconciler of demand and supply. We are not here to close anybody's transaction as far as business is concerned. So we disseminate information, we receive prospects, we guide those prospects through a process until it becomes an interest back at home in Trinidad and Tobago. Thirdly, I always have a diaspora meeting. And very quickly, I realized it does not make sense calling a Trinidad and Tobago diaspora meeting, because, there's an unwritten code of ethics among our Caribbean brethren where we find, if I call a Trinidad and Tobago meeting, I would have 500-600 people in the room, 300 would be Trinis, I'll have 200 Jamaicans, some Bajans, some Guyanese, Kitishans.
So it's more of a Caribbean diaspora.
It becomes a Caribbean event, and I was really trying to put sense to understand, why is this so? Why are we not seeing that level of connectivity in some instances right here in this region, but we see it, back in the United States? And I think I found my answer in Hartford, Connecticut. When you trace back the migratory patterns of our own people dating back to the 1930s, 1940s, they went to the states of Alabama, Connecticut to plant tobacco, citrus, cotton, and even sugarcane. And there was almost an unwritten code of ethics amongst themselves because the only common platform was an umbilical cord back to the Caribbean. And it is with great pride when I visit these cities, I see the level of camaraderie among our Caribbean people. And that has also incentivized my approach in dealing with the business community. You know, Trinidad and Tobago, we are a household in a gated community. And that gated community is the Caribbean. It will be very unwise of me to go and try to sell Trinidad and Tobago as a household without trying to sell the gated community. And our gated community happens to be in the neighborhood. To the north is North America, to the south is South America. And it has worked because it has facilitated a process where we now move almost as a caucus. I would go on business trips with Barbados, with Jamaica, and we sell the Caribbean and, go down into our respective territories. And it becomes a greater sell using that strategy.
Well, stay with us on News 4 as we continue our special report, Reconnecting the Diaspora. Well, that's how we wrap up this edition of our News 4 report, a product of the Government Information Services Limited. I'm Nicola Barreto. Thank you for joining us.